my dad was the president of the Black Power, Manawatu. So 2 of my brothers are now the president. My other 2 brothers are in the Mongols. My brother Sam was in the rebels. A lot of family members that have been murdered. From my cousin Wallace in Highbury, he was 16 and was shot. My uncle being shot. And then you got my brother who was murdered. I just want to work God's will and His purpose. Send me into the darkest world and I would be able to help them through it.
Oh, Savior,
Could you just please introduce yourself and where you're from originally?
Kia ora. So my name is Danielle Culling. I'm originally born in Palmerston North. Yeah, so my mum's side, or Ngāpuhi up in Whangarei, we're Otawa Marae, or area, and Pairata Marae. My father's side is from Gizi, Tailaga Bay. My mum was a solo mum, and my dad was the president of the Black Power, Manawatu. My mum, I never knew my dad up until I was like maybe 11 years old. Grew up with my mum. So I didn't even know that there was a place called Highbury, and I thought Highbury was like a different town. I didn't even know that my dad's side were gang affiliated. Yeah, grew up with my mum up until I was 12 years old. Primary schools in Palmerston North. Okay, so I went to St. Mary's, which is a Catholic school. I was baptised Catholic. Then I went to Cornerstone Christian School, and then that led on to quite an elite school in Palmerston North, which was Carncop. So everyone that knows the Manawatu, that's like the highest private school there. And it was amazing. My mum was amazing. Like, we had such a nurtured upbringing. Just never went without nothing. I was brought up in a Christian home. My uncles and my aunties all were church-based at Salvation Army. No, my dad wasn't in the picture at all. I didn't even know I was Māori. My parents, my mum's side are European, French actually, to be exact, French Jews. So I was brought up all the Jewish way. French was incorporated, and knew nothing about this other side of my dad's side.
So how many siblings do you have?
Altogether on my mum's side, let me start from the top. So I'm the eldest, and I got my brother Sam, and then I've got my sisters Susie and Esther and Joseph on my mum, so that's 5. And then on my dad's side, we have the eldest is Damien, Squash, La, Payback, Richard, Aku, H, Hawani, Daniel, me, Sam, my brother, and Shanae. So me and Sam are full-blooded, my only full-blooded sibling. So me and my brother were very close. My little sister, she was only 5 around that time, 3 or 4. My mum ended up finding a man. Just want to put out there that I have reconnected, and we've healed from this upbringing. And I love my mum and my stepfather very much. But to be honest, yeah, so she remarried, and our life turned completely upside down. We ended up, I haven't actually asked her, but we ended up with nothing. We sold everything. My mum flew overseas, met my stepfather in the Middle East, in Jordan to be exact, and then came back, and then next minute we ended up getting a father figure in our life. You know, when we were younger, we were always hoping to have a father in our life, and we expected so much. We were just so like proud of him at that time. But no, we ended up getting introduced into like violence, a lot of trauma, rejection, and my brother was kicked out of home at the age of 11. I was given to social welfare, so oranga tamariki, at 12 years old. Actually, I'm starting to think it was like 11 and 10. My brother was 10 and I was 11. Handed over to the system, and yeah, so we, went from a loving home having everything, never going without, into having nothing. Didn't know anything about the street life, didn't know anything about rejection, had never heard an argument, had never been around violence, and we were introduced to all of that pretty fast. Ended up taking me into foster care. So I'd done a little bit of foster care. My brother was kicked out of home. I don't even know where he was. I went into foster care, into some very, unsafe care. Thankfully, I was sort of rebellious, but now that I see that it was meant to be, but I would take off from them every single night. So they'd put me into a home in Bulls. That evening, I was gone, left my stuff, gone. Caught again, somewhere in Palmy, taken to another foster care, gone that night. And then, ended up doing a lot of time on the street. Sleeping on the streets. And my brother, I eventually ended up finding my brother, and he was with a minor. So because they couldn't control him either, he always had a guy that would mine him, and they would just be with him 24/7, and they'll go to motels and things like this. And the minor was able to find me, and I was able to reconnect with my brother again. So after 12, I ended up connecting with my brother. So he was always running away from the minors, he just would always escape. He would find me, and that's when he told me that, Danny, we've got family in Palmy. And I was like, what? So this particular time, it was the first time I'd ever met my brothers. My brother Sam came and got me, and he was like, Danny, I'm going to introduce you to our brothers. So he was 11, I was 12. And we went to Highbury. I didn't even know Highbury was on the other side of Palmy. And he told me to jump into this taxi. And so I jumped in, and I didn't realize how he was going to pay for it or anything. And we get to the spot, Highbury shops, and he says to me, Danny, jump out and run. So I jumped out, and we both ran. We ran to my brother's. Little did I know I had just jumped a taxi. And we ran to this house in Highbury on Pembroke Road, and opened the door, and there was 4 guys there. Anyway, they all start kissing me, giving, welcoming us in, asking how we are, different lifestyle. At that time, now that I know, my eldest brother, I was introduced to just some pretty rough things, like swearing and that. I was not used to people swearing. Verbal language towards my brother's partners I had not heard before, so that was all abnormal. And anyway, ended up staying there for a couple of hours, and then we left. And then I turned to my brother and I said, Sam, which ones were our brothers? And he's like, I don't know. But anyway, it turned out that the 4 of them, which was Damien, La, Aku, and Hawani, were all my brothers. So Highbury is probably the hood of Palmerston North, so it's very gang affiliated. Both sides, Mangum Mob and Black Powers. The Black Powers there are all my family. My dad started the gang, and so that's all I knew. Back then, very rough. It's a lot different now, the gangs. I find that back then there was a lot more loyalty and respect and stuff, but very rough. Yeah, very, very rough. I was quite intelligent at school. I skipped Form 2 from Cairncott and went straight into high school. But because I had no stability, no home, I would get into fights, and I got kicked out of Freiburg High School at the age of 12. So then from the connections I had met at school, I'd hang with them on the streets, Salvation Army in town on a Friday night was the best thing for me. It gave me somewhere to go. They fed us, all of us street kids, hang around in town, done some, criminal acts, stealing cars, that sort of stuff. And then, basically just moving from house to house. I was the fighting one. I don't know why. I just loved fighting. So I got caught up in the system. I ended up getting locked up, and the worst time ever. I promised that I would never ever come back in the cells ever again. I was in there for 2 weeks and then headed straight into Mohaka, which is a youth prison, and I'd done that for 3 months. It definitely tested me because I was put into a place unfamiliar. There were other girls there, and they all came at me like, what gang am I from? And so I just remember in that state being like, okay, this is now it. You're either going to get a hiding or you're not. So, and I could tell that they were, I actually couldn't tell what gang they were, but I was going to just take it on. And I just told them that I was Black Power. And there was only one other girl in there, and the rest of them, like the other 15 of them, were all Mongol mob. But this one girl, she was like the KP, which is like kingpin. So it was just me and her, and then they pretty much respected us while we were in there, so because of her. I was still 12, so a lot happened in that year. And then, got put on bail conditions, so curfew. And my brother Aku was probably the mentor in my life, and he kept like appearing at all my court cases, but because of my family being affiliated, they just kept denying custody until finally I got out of Mohaka for aggravated robbery. They decided to try and see if they put me with my dad's side, with my brother, that everything would be okay.
So what did you know of your dad at this point?
I didn't know much about him at all. I knew that he was very well respected. Like I could see the way my cousins and my family would treat him with like this utmost respect, and they'd never like back chat him or anything like this. And I used to play it actually. I used to play it on all my cousins and stuff that I was, I'd be laughing because I'd be like asking my dad for things, and my brothers or my cousins will be like, don't do that, you'll get in trouble. But I can tell by the way he is that he's had a really rough upbringing, to the fact that, showing emotions doesn't exist. Like, I don't even remember him telling me if he's ever loved me. I don't even remember a time where he's even hugged me. But I think his sort of love would be like, to be honest, if I asked him like, Dad, can I please have a joint? And he'll get me a joint. Do you know what I mean? Or can I have a cigarette? Or Dad, let's sit down and let's get wasted. I think he would be able to relate that way. I was introduced to a lot of things, like getting drunk and doing drugs and that. I did meth for the first time at the age of 12. So my older brothers, they were like the main ones. Like they're the ones that held the patch down. They held Highbury down. They kept the police occupied all the time. And then the rest have all followed. So 2 of my brothers are now the president of Manawatu. One of them is president of Manawatu. One of them is president of Forever's. And my other 2 brothers are in the Mongols. My brother Sam was in the Rebels. And my brother Aku, the one that brought me up, has always been tenoranga, teratanga, so he's always been family orientated. Yeah, so we have a lot of family members that have been murdered. I think it started right back from my cousin Wallace in Highbury. He was 16, he was shot by the Mongol mob. And then it eventuates into my uncle being shot, and he was in the Rebels. But all got gang affiliated, and then even not even getting affiliated. And then you got my brother who was murdered as well. No one's been charged for that, and there's a bit of a conspiracy about that, but I don't know the truth. All I know is that my bro Hemi wasn't the one that murdered, who went down for his murder. And then you've got like my cousin who was found in the Clutha River, and he was a Black Power. No one knows anything about that. And then my cousin Amaria, hers was horrific. She was murdered, and a lot happened to her, and then they found her 3 months later in someone's backyard with covered in paint, decomposed, and all of this. So we've made a lot in the news, especially for shootings and just in Palmerston in general. Yeah, so I never went to school, never went to high school after those little bits there. Stayed around Highbury. I remember these times where we had to prepare for drive-bys, and they were happening. The first time I experienced the drive-by, we're like at the front of the house, and there's this big, massive windows, and because my family are used to it, I don't know, and then a gun goes off, and I'm still standing there in shock, and my sister's like yelling at me, "Get down!" But like moments like that, and watching my family go on guard, my brothers go on guard, my cousins go on guard, the kids involved. My brother was shot and has still a scar here on his arm. So yeah, and then it eventuated. So I was still getting caught up in the crime scene with the police, and they said I was heading off to Arohata prison. They were going to lock me up and leave me at the youth prison until I turned of age, and then sent me to Arohata prison. I was able to come up with a deal with the court that if I left to go to Australia, that they would let me go and come up with like it'll be a better lifestyle. I'm getting away from the family life, because the court systems and the police knew everyone, and they knew, they just knew everyone, and so they knew what I was in for, or they could see that my future would end up down the same path as all my brothers and family and cousins and that. So I left at the age of 14 and went to Brisbane with my boyfriend. Yeah, so my boyfriend was my eldest daughter's father, and he was from Australia. So he was born and bred Brisbane, but he is Māori, from the Whanganui River. And so I left with him. And even though like I stepped out of that lifestyle, I went into a different sort of lifestyle, and I don't even know how it was introduced. Maybe when my stepfather came on the scene and opened up all the violence and abuse, verbal abuse, and that might have been something that I hadn't dealt with in myself, because I ended up in toxic relationships after that, and was like for years, from 14 all the way up to 18 years. So yeah, 4 years I was in a very violent and abusive relationship. So yep, getting hidings every day. I used to sing a lot. Probably the reason why I don't sing anymore, because my partner at the time would give me a hiding if I didn't sing on his track, because he wanted to be this rap artist, and would give me a hiding. And he gave me hidings all the way up until I was pregnant with my eldest. Even gave me hidings while I was pregnant. And I just remember like sitting there in Brisbane and being like, still praying and asking if God exists and stuff like this. Can you save me? There was many of times I tried to escape their relationships, but his family would get involved, and every time the police came, they would tell them to go away. I wasn't allowed to speak to them. So yeah, but that was hard, and that was very traumatic times. Very, very hard. And then so got on the plane. We both got on the plane. My partner at the time and my daughter. He was still abusive, even here in New Zealand. And then I ended up separating with him. Ended up working really, really hard with a daughter, and Amira was 6 months old, 8 months old, and I ended up buying my first home in Tokoroa. Oh, yeah, at 18. So I was really proud of myself. I had put myself back into studying. I wanted to carry on my singing, so I'd done sound engineer, doing a diploma in sound engineering, working at night, and being a solo mum in Tokoroa. I had my brother Sam, who I hadn't seen in years, and but it was heartbreaking during that time. He was still in the system. He had just started smoking crack, meth. So that was heartbreaking. I saw the process of him just deteriorating over time. Yeah, and he was coming back and forth and staying with me and just going on that journey with him. And then him in and out of prison. He was the first person to escape Wakaria prison at that time. So in my home, in my mum's home, we were getting raided. Police were there, everything, helicopters, everything. They had put out a newspaper saying shoot to kill on the spot. So I was experiencing that while trying to study, work at night with an 8-month-old baby. My mum, and that turning around and saying that, they're going to leave and they're going to move to the Middle East. So I was shattered, I was broken, and then my brother inside, and then I had a home, and my mum and that were the main carers at that time, looking after my daughter while I was studying and working. So I had no one to look after my daughter while I was working, to pay for the house, to carry on studying. So when they left, I just crumbled, just gave everything back, resold the house, resold my car, gave everything up, and ended up with nothing and moving back to Australia again. And then the cycle just carried on from there. But anyway, I ended up going back to Australia, back to Brisbane, back to Amira's dad, who was violent again after that. I was always told that it was my fault. And then I just snapped one day and just couldn't handle it anymore. And I picked up my daughter and we went to, luckily it was one of my older brothers' exes who had moved to Brisbane. So I went and lived with them for a little bit. And that was back into that sort of lifestyle again, back into Highbury, just without the protection of my brothers. So I was sort of like, went back into that scene, not gang affiliated, more the drug scene. So again, smoking meth. There was a lot of, so my sisters and that, there was working girls sort of things going on there. So yes, I was introduced into that. And ended up, I felt like I was being used by them, and so the whole of us household was smoking it. And we had about 7 kids, and they were probably under the age of 5, maybe more. And everyone was just so fried. And I was just looking at the kids, and I remember thinking, like, what the hell? Like, this is not right. This is wrong. So I ended up looking after the kids for a couple of days. I would take them away. I'm still fried at the same time. And I would take them away, and I just remember thinking, like, no, I can't do this. This isn't right. I don't want to be in this lifestyle. I don't want the kids to grow up like this. So I ended up leaving that environment, and my only support in that, because I was going to go homeless, was me going out and working in a house. Was it like in a brothel house? Yes, I did. And that experience, I earned really good money, let's just say that. And I was probably one of the top ones in there. Money was not a problem at all. I used to go shopping, Louis Vuitton, and that would be like a dream for people. It wasn't that hard. My eldest was through this as well. We lived in high-end hotels in Brisbane. I ended up doing really well. I got lost again into that whole materialistic world. I wasn't around any violence anymore. I wasn't getting beaten up and things like this. And it was more like getting, I had no confidence in myself. I always thought I was ugly. I had nothing. I thought the worst of me. My parents didn't want me, um, my ex-partner didn't want me. He was giving me hidings, cheating on me. I just couldn't understand it. So, and then when I went into this position and I ended up becoming like one of the top ones in there, I couldn't understand why I was getting all this attention and all of that. And then, so got lost in all of that for about a year. And then I ended up realizing, like, crying out and being like, no, this is not, I don't want to do this. I know this is wrong. This is when my life started changing, when I started trying to find God again. And I was like, no, because I had the money to set myself up. I'd saved everything and I'd gone into gone and found another home for us, trying to slowly get out of living that luxury life. And then I ended up falling back into a relationship again and going worse. He still wanted me to keep working. He probably gave me the worst hiding of my life. He kidnapped me for 3 days. He had, and hiding, I mean, like, my face was unrecognizable. Like, it was swollen. I had jumped out a window that almost knocked me out. This was the first time I experienced homelessness with my daughter in the car for 3 days. No money, no nothing. I remember crying every single night. I parked up at a Christian school because I felt like that was the safest place for me to be. Just never ending. And then finally saving up enough money again, because I'd done well there again. And then heading back to Brisbane and then catching up with an old friend, which was good. Okay, and then he wanted a relationship. So then I fall back into another relationship, end up falling pregnant. But then that relationship was just like a relationship where you're just like, oh, yep, just make do. Who cares? Like, it's better than, you're getting bashed up. It's better than someone that's got mental disorder. This is where my life started to change. I was able to gain back some sort of like mental ability and try and find God and slowly trying to introduce him back into my life and just praying and stuff. And then I realized the kid's father, he said that he never wanted to know God, and so I knew that was never going to last long. And I ended up having 2 boys to him, and then breaking up with him, leaving him, falling back into another relationship. And it didn't go from alcohol, it went into narcissism and marrying this guy, and the whole mental game. This was a whole mental game, and it was like completely different. So I had someone controlling me physically. This one was all mentally and emotional. Wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to open up businesses. I was able to gain back what I could mentally in that, and but I had so many issues I needed to deal with. My walk with God was growing within myself and the kids. My husband at the time, I don't know, he just was oblivious to anything. I had spoken to my brother a couple of days before, and I had this really weird feeling. That day at midday, I get a phone call from the streets from my friend, and her man is in like the Mungal mob. Well, it was in the Mungal mob scene there, ringing me and saying, Danny, your brother's been murdered. And I was like, what do you mean? She said, there's talks on the street, your brother's been murdered. So I hang up from her. I ring the police in Palmerston North. Can't get a hold of them. So I'm just ringing any police station. I don't even care, because if he's dead, it'll come up on all their systems. And then she checked, and then she came back to me and she's like, a detective's going to get in contact with you, and very shortly. And I was like, what do you mean, a detective? And she's like, a detective will get in contact with you shortly. So the police started notifying everyone about 5 o'clock that evening that it could be Sam from fingerprints, but they couldn't like ID him physically. So then I ended up just booking my tickets the next day, taking off to Palmerston North, and going back to everything that I had left behind since I was 19. Going back to Highbury, hadn't seen my family in ages. And then, arriving there at midnight. So I ended up arriving in Wellington. My dad came and picked me up, and we took off to the morgue. And that was the first time I got to see my brother since I was 18. I remember just mourning him for maybe half an hour. And then I felt like, I don't know, I woke up. So we get in from the morgue to the funeral place. I see my family, I see my brothers and everything. My brother H, Hawani, he hadn't seen him in a while. He's the pres of the Forever Blacks. Hadn't seen my brother Aku for ages, just reconnecting with family again. So that was good, and that was hard. Yep, so Sam's is still an unsolved murder. Yes, so he was running with the rebels. So Sam's mentor was Shane Martin, and he became a really good guy in my life. He actually told me not to come back to New Zealand. He told me not to come back and find answers, but more so for my kids and stuff, and not to bring them into this sort of life. Yeah, they believed Hemi had set him up because the news articles and stuff weren't nice at all. I think I'm the only one and his mum that ever believed him at that point. Okay, last 5 years, wow. So my marriage ended up breaking up. That was the hardest decision ever, because I was trying to get back into my faith, and we only got married because we just wanted to live right by God. But then I started to this is when I really started digging deep into my faith, and just started working. It didn't happen overnight. It took a few years. It's not until last year, September, I was like, all right, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go all in with this. And then, having to start correcting my life. So no more drinking, wasn't until last year, September, when I started straightening things out. No more drinking, no more going to parties, or, when the kids go away for this on their fortnight weekend, I wouldn't be out at the clubs, not the clubs, at the pubs, and drinking with all my rugby friends. And then just up until it was the beginning of this year, Hemi was supposed to be getting out in January against the parole. And I decided, all right. So his parole was coming up, and I decided to, okay, Lord, I want this, I want everything. So go on a 7-day water fast. And that was to pretty much anything that I needed to renounce in my life, like soul ties, addictions, rejection, pretty much sort of what people do, go to people for deliverance. I was trying to do that through my fasting, and just deliver myself from all of that sort of stuff. And then, and also for Hemi to get out. So yeah, so everything else was good. The only thing that wasn't answered was that Hemi remained still inside. So, but that's God's will, because only God gives the authority to what, at the end of the day, it's his authority, not ours.
What are you doing currently?
Currently, I've been doing a little bit of like testimonies here and there, alongside studying psychology and a Bachelor of Health and Science. And yeah, so I'm hoping I thought I was going to go into reintegration, rehabilitation, and do forensic psychology and carry on doing like the criminal psychology, but I ended up having to change all my majors in that today, actually, to be honest, into suiting the job position that I'm going to be undertaking. I have no idea what my future holds at the moment. Just the fact that I just want to work God's will and his purpose. I want to be used as a vessel here on earth so that I can, I don't know, go and spread love and forgiveness. No matter what situations we've been in, there's always a purpose behind it. So like everything that I'd been through, those stages of life have prepped me to be who I am today. So you can send me into the darkest realm or wherever, darkest world, and I would be able to cope but relate to people and help them through it and just be there for them. So I really feel like my calling is to be amongst people that deal with traumatic upbringings and still are living that life. In those times, you will always fall back into like those habits and stuff because it's comfortability. It's like what you know, it's what you're used to. But honestly, there will be one day where you just get sick of it and you've tried everything. You've tried everything else, but have you tried this? So I want you to try this. I just want you to get on your knees and just surrender. Just surrender to God and just ask if he exists. And if he exists, ask him to help you. But if he shows you that he exists, then you know he exists, then you should commit fully to knowing him. This is at your like lowest point in life, when you know you've tried everything else and nothing else is working, then get on your knees and cry out. If you don't know him, it's like, I don't know you. I heard from this girl called Danny that to try this, so I'm trying this. And I want to know that, you exist. Can you show me or whatever? Like, can you help me get out of this situation or whatever it is? But if he does, just know that he does exist. Then, commit your life and just keep going. Yeah.